Imagine waking up in a world where the sun is your only clock, and a single toothache could be a death sentence. Before you even open your eyes, you realize the silence of 1776 isn't peaceful, it's heavy, smelling of cold ash and damp earth. You are about to endure 24 hours of a life so brutal, your modern mind can barely conceive it, yet so simple, your soul might secretly crave its rhythm. But you are not truly there. You are here, wrapped in the impossible luxury of the 21st century. As I guide you through the freezing floors and the bone-deep exhaustion of the past, I want you to feel the weight of your own blankets. Notice the steady, climate-controlled air in your room. You are a ghost, a silent observer protected by the fortress of time. Let your breathing slow down. Sink an inch deeper into your mattress, knowing that no matter how harsh the world of 1776 becomes in our story, you are perfectly, utterly safe. Now, let that modern safety become a transparent shield. We drift back. The year is 1776. The darkness here isn't empty. It's textured, pressing against your skin like raw wool. You are lying on a bed that is nothing more than a linen sack stuffed with corn husks, whispering and crackling with every micro-movement of your body. You aren't alone. In the corners of this room, the rhythmic, heavy breathing of 3 other people joins the choir of the house settling. There are no locks on the doors, no glass in the small windows, only the raw, unyielding reality of the American frontier. The air is so cold, it turns your breath into a ghostly mist, barely visible in the starlight. You reach out a hand, feeling for the edge of the wooden frame, and your fingers brush against something small, scurrying, and very much alive. This is the beginning of your day. A day defined by the search for warmth, the labor for water, and the quiet dignity of a life stripped to its very core. Think for a moment about the concept of darkness. In your world, darkness is a choice. It's the flick of a switch, the closing of a curtain. But in the winter of 1776, darkness is a primordial force. It is an ocean that swallows the landscape for 14 hours a day. When you lie in this room, you are not just in the dark, you are submerged in it. The walls of your small timber home do not just keep out the wind. They hold in the stories, the fears, and the very breath of everyone inside. There is no hum of a refrigerator, no distant whine of a highway, no electronic pulse vibrating in the walls. There is only the wind, the occasional snap of a freezing branch outside, and the settling of the heavy oak beams above you. Your body, however, knows it is time. Your internal clock, uncorrupted by blue light and artificial schedules, feels the subtle shift in the atmosphere. The rooster has not yet announced the dawn, but the air is changing. It is becoming sharper, more urgent. In this era, sleep is not a leisure activity. It is a brief, necessary recovery from a level of physical toil that would break a modern athlete. Your muscles ache with a dull, persistent throb, a souvenir from yesterday's wood splitting and water carrying. As you lie there, suspended between the comfort of your modern bed and the phantom memories of this ancient straw mattress, notice the texture of the air. It's not just cold, it's heavy with the scent of the hearth. Even though the fire died down hours ago, the smell of charred hickory and oak is woven into the very fabric of the walls. It's a scent that means survival. In 1776, smoke is the smell of home. You feel a slight movement to your left. Your younger brother, or perhaps a cousin, is sharing this narrow space with you. There is no concept of personal space here. Bodies are sources of heat. You learn to sleep intertwined, a human knot of warmth against the encroaching frost that is currently blooming in intricate fern-like patterns on the inside of the wooden shutters. This proximity, which might feel stifling today, is a profound comfort then. It is the heartbeat of the family, the physical manifestation of us against the world. Now, imagine the transition. The moment when the mind must convince the body to leave the relative sanctuary of the straw. You are aware that the floorboards beneath the bed are essentially ice. There is no insulation under those planks, just the dark, frozen earth of the crawl space. To step out is to surrender the last of your hoarded warmth. But the day demands it. The animals are stirring in the lean-to attached to the house. The cow needs milking, the fire needs a spark, and the cycle of survival waits for no one's comfort. You are a ghost, remember? You don't have to feel the bite of the frost, but you can see it. You can see the way the starlight filters through the cracks in the roof, illuminating the dust motes that hang frozen in the air. You can see the heavy wool blankets, patched and frayed, that have been passed down through 3 generations. Every object in this room has a history. Every cloth was spun by hand. Every board was hewn by an axe. There is no such thing as disposable here. This is the threshold. We are standing at the very edge of a day that will test every fiber of your being. But as you watch this scene unfold from your safe, warm vantage point, you begin to realize that these people, your ancestors, didn't see this as a tragedy. This was simply the shape of life. It was hard, yes, but it was also solid. It was real in a way that our digital world often fails to be. But as your hand retreats from the cold, you realize the true nature of your bed, a structure of ropes and straw that is currently hosting a hidden, biting ecosystem. The mattress beneath you is not a single solid object, but a complex and noisy ecosystem of survival. In the year 1776, the phrase, "sleep tight," is not a hollow endearment. It is a literal instruction for survival. You are lying on a straw-stuffed tick, supported by a network of heavy hemp ropes woven across a wooden frame. Throughout the day, these ropes stretch and sag under the weight of human life. And if they are not tightened with a wooden key before you climb in, you will spend the night sinking into a cold, uncomfortable valley in the center of the bed. Feel the ghost of that tension now. In your modern world, support is invisible and automatic, but here, even the act of lying flat is a result of deliberate manual labor. Take a moment to listen to the straw. Every time you draw a breath, every time your pulse thumps against the coarse linen casing, the dried maize husks and wheat stalks beneath you whisper back. It is a dry, frantic sound, a reminder that you are resting on the remnants of last year's harvest. This bed is not just a place of rest, it is a seasonal record of the farm's productivity. In a good year, the tick is plump and firm, smelling of sunshine and dried fields. In a lean year, the straw is thin, and you can feel the bite of the ropes against your shoulder blades through the fabric. But the straw is not the only thing moving beneath you. To live in 1776 is to accept that you are never truly the sole occupant of your skin. Within the folds of the mattress and the heavy wool of the blankets, a hidden world of hitchhikers thrives. Bedbugs, lice, and fleas are not signs of poor character or extreme poverty. They are the universal tax of the 18th century. They move with a slow, itchy persistence, a constant background radiation of discomfort that your ancestors simply learned to tune out. As you lie there in your clean, sterile room, imagine the mental strength required to find peace while something small and nameless explores the crook of your elbow. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit that sleep comes at all, and yet it comes with a depth that we rarely achieve today. The blankets piled on top of you are a history of your family's hands. There is no synthetic fleece here, no electric warmth. You are covered by layers of homespun, wool that was sheared from sheep you likely know by name, cleaned of its lanolin grease, carded, spun into oily yarn on a high wheel, and woven on a heavy loom in the corner of the room. These blankets are heavy, weighing perhaps 20 pounds, pressing you down into the straw with a comforting, gravity-driven embrace. They smell of the sheep, of the lye soap used to wash them, and of the stale tallow of the candles, burned during the hundreds of hours it took to create them. You shift your leg, trying to find a spot that hasn't been warmed by your own body heat, and you encounter the warmth of another person. In this house, heating a room is an expensive, difficult task, and the most efficient furnace is the person sleeping next to you. You are likely sharing this bed with a sibling, a spouse, or perhaps even a traveler who has paid a few pence for a spot of floor or a corner of the frame. There is no shame in this proximity. There is only the practical necessity of shared warmth. You hear their rhythmic, whistling breath, a human metronome that keeps time with the wind outside. As the cold air of the room bites at your nose, the only part of you exposed to the elements, you realize that this bed is a fortress. Outside the heavy wool and the crackling straw, the temperature in the room has dropped so low that the water in the wash basin has frozen into a solid white disk. The air is so still and so sharp that it feels like glass in your lungs. But here, under the weight of the family's labor, you have created a microclimate of survival. You are a small island of 98 degrees in a sea of freezing timber. This is the safe foundation of the 18th century. It is not a safety of locks and alarms, but a safety of layers. Layers of wool, layers of people, and the psychological layer of knowing that as long as you stay under these blankets, the winter cannot touch you. You watch the frost creep across the wood plank walls, tracing the silver moonlight that bleeds through the gaps in the shutters. The world outside is vast, dark, and indifferent, but this bed is an intentional act of defiance against the cold. The silence of the house is beginning to fray. Somewhere below you, or perhaps just beyond the thin partition wall, a heavy boot hits the floor with a dull thud. The transition from the sanctuary of the blankets to the reality of the day is approaching. You cling to the warmth, memorizing the scent of the wool and the scratch of the linen, knowing that the moment your feet touch the floor, the battle begins again. You are resting in the last few minutes of a peace that was earned through exhaustion, a peace that is about to be shattered by the most fundamental necessity of life, the fire. But even as you prepare to move, you feel a deep ancestral pull to stay still. Your body is heavy, anchored by the cold air pressing down on the blankets. You realize that in this world, every movement has a cost in calories and energy. To get up is to spend what you have spent all night hoarding. You take one last deep breath of the wood-scented air, feeling the scratchy comfort of the straw, before the first true sound of the morning breaks the spell. The heavy metallic clink of a shovel hitting the hearthstone echoes through the floorboards, signaling that the embers of yesterday are being coaxed back to life. It is a sound that means the house is officially awake, and the frozen floor is now an inevitability you can no longer avoid. As you prepare to swing your legs out into the biting air, you realize that the very ropes supporting you are part of a larger, unseen web of colonial life, one that requires constant tightening just to keep from falling through. The moment of truth arrives with the first contact between your skin and the world outside the blankets. As you finally throw back the heavy, wool-laden covers, the residual warmth you've spent all night cultivating vanishes in a heartbeat, replaced by an air so sharp it feels like a physical blow to your chest. Your feet swing out over the edge of the rope-slung bed, hovering for a second in the dark before they meet the floorboards. In the year 1776, there is no such thing as a warm floor. These wide planks of white pine or oak have been absorbing the deep frost of a colonial winter for months. The contact is electric as searing, dry cold that travels from your soles, up through your shins, and straight to the base of your skull. You are instantly, violently awake, every nerve ending in your body, screaming at the sudden shift in reality. The darkness of the room is now broken only by the faintest ghostly gray light filtering through the gaps in the heavy wooden shutters. There is no glass in these windows. Glass is a taxed luxury, a fragile thing that most frontier homes cannot afford. Instead, there is only the thick wood and perhaps a bit of oiled paper that rattles in the wind. You stand up, your joints cracking in the chill, and realize that your body feels different here. It feels heavy, tethered to the earth by the sheer effort of existing. In this world, the first task of every human being, before they eat, before they speak, is to attend to the fire. You move toward the hearth by memory, your bare feet whispering against the grit of the floor. The hearth is the altar of the home, the literal heart that keeps the pulse of the family beating. If the fire dies completely, you face the grueling task of using a flint and steel to strike a spark into a nest of charred linen or dried moss, a process that can take 20 minutes of frustrated striking with frozen, clumsy fingers. You kneel on the stone hearth, the cold of the rock seeping into your knees. You reach into the gray mound of ash with a small iron shovel, searching for the living heart of the house. Deep beneath the gray coat, you find them. 3 or 4 glowing orange embers, the survivors of last night's massive hardwood log. They are small, pulsing with a faint, defiant light. You cherish them. You pile a handful of wood shavings and small, dry twigs over these embers. Then you lean down, your face inches from the ash, and you breathe. This is a sacred moment. Your breath, the very sign of your life, is what coaxes the fire back from the brink of extinction. You blow softly, a steady rhythmic stream of air. The embers brighten from a dull orange to a brilliant, searing white. A thin ribbon of blue smoke curls up, stinging your eyes and filling your lungs with the scent of toasted pine. Then, with a sudden cheerful snap, a tiny yellow flame licks upward. You feed it more. Larger sticks, then a split log of seasoned hickory. The light begins to grow, casting long dancing shadows of your own figure against the timber walls. The warmth doesn't come immediately. The room is too vast, the cold too entrenched, but the light provides a psychological shield. As you watch the flames begin to roar, you feel a deep sense of accomplishment. You have secured the day. You have brought the sun into the house before it has even risen over the horizon. Now, you turn to the small wash basin on the nearby bench. The water inside is a solid block of ice, a miniature frozen lake reflecting the new firelight. You take a heavy ceramic mug and shatter the surface, the ice breaking with a sound like crystalline glass. You splash the numbing, slushy water onto your face. It is a shock that would make a modern person gasp. But for you, it is simply the ritual of the morning. It washes away the lingering traces of the bed warmth and replaces it with a hard, clear-eyed readiness. You stand there for a moment, dripping, the fire crackling behind you and the frozen world waiting outside. You are a ghost, watching this version of yourself endure a morning that would break most people today. But look at the strength in those hands. Look at the focus in those eyes. There is no dread here, only the steady, quiet acceptance of the work. The house is warming. The light is reclaiming the corners of the room, and the first true sounds of the farm are beginning to rise from the barn outside. But as you reach for your clothes, draped over a chair to keep them away from the floor's dampness, you realize that the most intimate and difficult part of your morning routine is just beginning a process of layering and lacing that defines your station, your gender, and your variability to move through the world. The clothing of 1776 is not merely a covering for the body. It is a complex architectural undertaking, a series of layers designed to insulate, protect, and signal your place in a world that judges you by the quality of your linen and the sturdiness of your wool. As you stand before the growing fire, your skin still tingling from the icy water, you reach for your shift or your shirt. This is the most intimate layer, the one that lives against your skin day and night, acting as a barrier between your sweat and the expensive, heavy outer garments that are almost never washed. In your modern world, you are used to the effortless glide of a zipper or the quick snap of a button. But here, everything is a matter of ties, laces, and small, stubborn closures. If you are a woman, you begin with the shift, a long, loose garment of plain woven linen. It feels cool, and slightly stiff at first, but it quickly warms to your body temperature. Over this goes the stay, ancestor of the corset, but do not think of it as a torture device. It is a functional tool of the working class, a stiffened bodice reinforced with buckram or even thin strips of wood. It supports your back for the hours of leaning over a hearth or hauling water, acting like a weightlifter's belt. You lace it up the front or the back, feeling the sudden, firm cinch that pulls your posture upright. It changes the way you breathe, moving your breath from your belly to your chest, creating a rhythmic, shallow rise and fall that will stay with you until you unlace tonight. Then come the pockets. In 1776, pockets are not sewn into your skirt. They are separate pouches tied around your waist with a string. You reach for them now, feeling the weight of the few precious things you carry: a small folding knife, a bit of lint for tinder, perhaps a lucky stone or a coin. Over these, you layer your petticoats, not one, but 2 or 3, made of heavy felted wool. They are incredibly heavy, dragging at your waist, but as you tie the drawstrings, you feel a sudden, radiating warmth. They trap a pocket of air around your legs, a private tent of heat that will be your only defense against the drafts that scream through the floorboards all day. If you are a man, you pull on your breeches. They are made of leather or thick wool, stopping just below the knee. There is no elastic here. You fasten the fall front with brass buttons that are cold against your thumb, then reach for your stockings. These are hand-knit, thick, and slightly itchy, pulled up over the calf and secured with leather garters. Then comes the waistcoat, and finally the coat, a heavy, structured garment that limits your range of motion, forcing you into a deliberate, dignified gait. Now you look at your shoes. In this year, there is often no distinction between left and right. They are straights, made on a universal last, designed to be swapped from foot to foot, each day to ensure they wear down evenly. They are stiff, made of blackened cowhide with a win, a heavy, wooden or leather heel. As you slide your feet into them, they feel unforgiving, an uncompromising cage for your toes. You feel the pinch and the rub, knowing that by noon, your feet will be a map of blisters and sore spots. There is no cushioning, no arch, support only the hard reality of the earth beneath you. As you finish dressing, lacing your bodice, or buttoning your linen cravat, you realize how much time has passed. In your modern life, getting dressed takes 3 minutes. Here, it is a 20-minute ritual of preparation. You are layering yourself against a world that is fundamentally hostile to your comfort. By the time you are fully dressed, you feel encased, almost armored. Your movements are no longer fluid. They are purposeful. You cannot slouch in these clothes. You cannot move quickly without feeling the resistance of the heavy wool and the tight laces. You stand by the hearth for one last moment. The fire now a steady roar, feeling the weight of your transformation. You are no longer the ghost of a modern person. You are a colonial soul, bound by fabric and tradition. The house is full of the sounds of others doing the same, the rustle of heavy skirts, the stomp of boots, the rhythmic clink of buckles. But as you turn toward the door to begin the day's labor, you realize that your physical preparation is only half the battle. Your body is covered, but your stomach is empty, and the air in the kitchen is beginning to carry the scent of a breakfast that would challenge even the strongest modern palate. The kitchen in 1776 is not a room of gleaming surfaces and silent appliances. It is a blackened, soot-stained cavern of heat and necessity. As you step across the threshold, the smell hits you, a thick, layered atmosphere of old grease, pungent wood smoke, and the sour tang of fermenting grain. There is no ventilation here other than the massive chimney, and the air feels heavy, almost edible, clinging to your skin and the wool of your fresh clothes. In the center of this world sits the long trestle table, its surface scarred by decades of knives and scrubbed pale by lye. You are hungry. But hunger in this century is a constant companion, a dull ache that never truly vanishes. Breakfast is not a moment of culinary joy. It is a fuel injection for the grueling hours of labor ahead. You watch as a heavy iron pot, hanging from a blackened crane over the fire, is swung out toward you. Inside is the hasty pudding, a thick, grayish mass of cornmeal boiled in water, or if the family is fortunate, a bit of skimmed milk. It is lumpy, dense, and smells of nothing but scorched grain. There's no array of cereal boxes, no steaming espresso, no fresh fruit from distant climates. You sit on a backless wooden bench, feeling the cold draft from the floorboards competing with the searing heat of the hearth against your back. You are handed a pewter or wooden spoon, its edges worn smooth by generations of mouths. As you dip it into the communal bowl, or your own small wooden trencher, you realize that this meal is a test of endurance. The pudding is hot enough to blister your tongue, yet bland enough to make your soul weary. To wash it down, there is no orange juice or filtered water. Instead, you are handed a tankard of small beer. This is not the potent ale of the evening tavern. It is a weak, yeasty brew, fermented just enough to ensure the water is safe to drink. In 1776, water is a gamble. It carries the invisible ghosts of cholera and dysentery. So, from the youngest child to the oldest grandfather, everyone starts their day with the dull, fermented hum of grain. It tastes of wet bread and bitter hops, coating your throat and providing a slow, steady burn of calories. The silence at the table is profound. In this world, talk is for the evening, after the work is done. Now, there is only the rhythmic scrape of spoons against wood and the heavy swallowing of a family preparing for battle. You look at the person across from you, perhaps your father or a hired hand. His face is a map of deep lines, etched by sun and salt, his hands stained permanently by the tannin of leather or the soot of the forge. He doesn't look at you. His eyes are fixed on the steam rising from his bowl, his mind already calculating the cords of wood to be split or the miles to be walked. As you eat, you notice the salt. It sits in a large shared cellar in the middle of the table. This is not the fine white powder of your modern kitchen. It is gray, coarse, and precious. You take a small pinch, feeling the sharp crystals between your fingers, and realize that this substance was hauled by ship and wagon across hundreds of miles just to make this bland porridge tolerable. It is a reminder that you are at the very end of a fragile global umbilical cord. The warmth of the pudding begins to spread through your chest, a small glowing coal of energy. But the comfort is fleeting. You are aware of the reality of the morning, the realization that this meal, as meager as it is, represents hours of someone's labor from the previous season. The corn was planted, hoed, harvested, husked, dried and ground by hand, just to fill this one bowl. Every bite is a debt to the past. You feel your modern sensibilities recoiling from the monotony, the lack of spice, the repetitive texture of the grain. Yet, as you sit in the amber light of the hearth, you feel a strange, grounding sense of safety. You are fed. In a world where a late frost or a wet harvest can mean starvation by March, a full belly in the morning is a profound victory. You lean back slightly, the heavy wool of your skirts or breeches trapping the heat of the fire, and for a few minutes, the world feels manageable. But the ritual is ending. The last of the small beer is drained, and the tankards hit the table with a series of final wooden thuds. The return to safe is over, and the transition to the outside world begins. You hear the wind howling around the corner of the house, a reminder that the sanctuary of the kitchen is only a temporary truce. The door creaks open just an inch, and a needle of sub-zero air slices through the warmth of the room, smelling of frozen pine and distant snow. It is time to leave the fire. The garth and the woods are calling, and the woodpile, the lifeblood of the house, is dwindling. You must go out and claim the day's warmth from the frozen earth itself, knowing that every calorie you just consumed will be spent before the sun reaches its zenith. As you step out from the heavy timber door of the house, the transition is a physical assault. The moisture from your breath, still warm from the morning's hasty pudding, freezes instantly into tiny ice crystals on your collar. The world of 1776, in midwinter, is a landscape of monochrome brutality, whites, grays, and the deep, bruised blue of a pre-dawn sky. There is no pavement here, no salted roads, no gravel paths. There is only the frozen, rutted earth, capped by a layer of crusty snow that crunches under your straight-soled shoes with a sound like breaking glass. Each step is a calculation. The leather soles of your shoes have no grip, and the uneven ground threatens to snap an ankle with every stride. Your first destination is the woodpile, a massive, jagged mountain of hickory, oak, and pine that stands as the only thing between your family and a cold death. In this century, wood is not just fuel. It is the very currency of survival. An average colonial hearth can consume 30 to 40 cords of wood in a single winter. To look at the woodpile is to look at a calendar of back-breaking labor. Every log represents a tree that was felled by hand, limbed with an axe, oiled by oxen, and cross-cut into manageable lengths. You pick up the felling axe. The wooden handle is polished smooth by sweat and oil, but it is unnaturally cold, stealing the heat from your palms even through your heavy wool mittens. You set a thick round of oak on the chopping block. You feel the weight of the tool, the balance of the iron head, and you swing. The crack of the axe, splitting the frozen grain, echoes across the silent valley, a sharp, lonely report that sounds like a gunshot. This is the rhythm of your morning. Swing, crack, stack. Swing, crack, stack. The physical effort begins to generate a deceptive internal heat. Your heart pumps harder, and soon a thin veil of steam rises from your shoulders, drifting upward into the freezing air like a ghost. This is the immersive reality of the colonial laborer. You are caught in a paradox where your core is burning while your extremities, your nose, your ears, your toes, are slowly losing their feeling to the frost. You can smell the scent of the wood as it splits open, a sudden fleeting release of summer sap and ancient forest air, quickly quelled by the cold. As you work, you look toward the horizon. The sun is finally beginning to bleed over the edge of the world, but it offers no warmth, only a pale, watery light that makes the snow-covered fields glow with an eerie violet hue. You see the thin plumes of smoke rising from the chimneys of your distant neighbors. In 1776, smoke is a signal of life. A chimney without smoke is a tragedy, a sign of a hearth gone cold or a family too ill to tend it. You feel a sudden, deep connection to those distant pillars of gray. You are all part of a silent, shivering brotherhood, bound together by the shared necessity of the flame. But your task is not done. Once the wood is split, it must be carried. You gather an armload of the heavy, rough-barked logs, the weight pressing against your chest, forcing the air out of your lungs. You carry them back to the house, your muscles screaming with the dull ache of repetitive toil. This is the slow story of your existence. There is no machine to do this. For you, there is no button to push for heat. Every degree of warmth in that house is paid for with the literal ache in your bones. You drop the load by the door and pause for a second, your breath coming in ragged, white plumes. In this moment of exhaustion, you find a return to safe. You look back at the small, sturdy house. It looks tiny against the vast, untamed wilderness of the American frontier, but it is yours. Inside that box of wood and stone is everything that matters: the fire you coax to life, the people you share your bed with, the small hoard of grain that keeps the hunger at bay. The hardship of the woodpile makes the safety of the indoors feel like a miraculous gift rather than a basic right. You realize that in your modern life, you have lost this relationship with heat. You have forgotten that warmth is something that must be earned. But here, as you reach for the next log, your frozen fingers fumbling with the bark, you understand the true value of a single spark. You are tired. Your blisters are beginning to throb under your mittens, and the day has barely begun. Yet, there is a strange, quiet peace in the work. There are no emails to answer, no notifications screaming for your attention, no complex social webs to navigate. There is only the axe, the wood, and the cold. It is a life stripped of its finery, reduced to the beautiful, terrifying simplicity of staying alive. As you turn to head toward the well for the morning's water, you catch a glimpse of your reflection in a patch of black ice. You barely recognize the person looking back. The face is smudged with soot, the eyes are narrowed against the wind, and the posture is set with a grim, enduring strength. You are becoming a part of the landscape, as rugged and unyielding as the oak you are splitting. But the water is next, and the well is a deep, dark throat of stone that holds its own set of frozen challenges, requiring a different kind of strength and a much deeper level of patience. You draw one last deep breath of the freezing air, feeling it crystallize in your nostrils before taking the first heavy step toward the well. The iron handle of the wooden bucket is a searing line of ice against your palm as you make your way toward the well. In the year of 1776, water is not a phantom that appears at the turn of a chrome lever. It is a heavy frozen treasure hidden deep within the throat of the earth. Every gallon used by the household, for the morning's hasty pudding, for the livestock, for the rudimentary washing of hands, must be hauled up by the strength of your shoulders. You reach the stone windlass, and the wooden bucket descends into the black void of the well shaft, its rhythmic clatter against the stone walls echoing upward like a lonely drum. When the bucket hits the water far below, the sound is a dull, muffled thud, dampened by the floating shelf of ice that has formed overnight. You haul it back up, hand over hand, the wet hemp rope freezing into stiff, jagged needles that bite through your mittens. By the time the bucket reaches the surface, your lungs are burning with the effort, and the water inside is sloshing over the rim, instantly turning into a slick, treacherous glaze on the stones beneath your feet. This is the immersive reality of the colonial morning, a relentless cycle of physical demand, where even the most basic element of life requires a combat maneuver against the elements. You carry the full buckets back toward the house, your gait wide and steady to prevent spilling a single precious drop. The weight stretches your arms, pulling at the muscles in your neck, a constant reminder that in this world, your body is the primary engine of existence. As you enter the lean-to or the back scullery, the scent changes. It is here that the sensory map of the 18th century becomes truly vivid. You are met with the sharp, acidic tang of the chamber pots waiting to be emptied, a smell that is as much a part of the morning as the wood smoke. In 1776, the human nose is not the delicate, easily offended instrument of the modern era. It is an organ of survival, accustomed to the raw, unfiltered odors of life and decay. You set the water down and begin the grim, necessary task of mucking out. This isn't just about cleanliness. It's about the maintenance of the small, fragile space you call home. You take the heavy ceramic or pewter pots out to the waste pit or the garden, the steam from the waste rising into the freezing air. It is a moment of profound reveal, the realization that without modern plumbing, the cycle of consumption and waste is an intimate, daily confrontation. There is no way to throw things to. Everything stays within the circle of your labor. But as you return to the warmth of the kitchen to wash your hands in a sliver of lye soap and a splash of that hard-won water, you find a return to safe. The lye soap is harsh, smelling of animal fat and wood ash, but it represents the thin line of civilization you maintain against the wilderness. You dry your hands on a coarse linen towel, feeling the blood rushing back into your fingertips. the tingling warmth a small private victory over the frost. The kitchen is now humming with activity. The fire is a stable, golden presence, and the sheer effort of the morning's chores has earned you a seat by the hearth for a few brief moments of recovery. As you sit, you watch the steam rising from your damp wool sleeves. You are exhausted, and the sun has barely cleared the tree line, yet there is a deep, quiet satisfaction in the exhaustion. You have fed the fire, you have watered the house, and you have cleansed the sanctuary. You are a ghost no longer. You are a vital gear in the machinery of this family's survival. You close your eyes for a second, letting the heat of the fire soak into your aching knees, grounding yourself in the heavy, solid reality of the wooden bench beneath you. But the peace is interrupted by a sharp, throbbing reminder of your own mortality. As you clench your jaw against a stray draft, a bolt of white-hot pain shoots from your gum to your temple. It is a reminder that while you have conquered the cold and the dark, the hidden rot of the 18th century is always waiting. And today, you must face the terrifying reality of colonial medicine. You feel the slow pulse of the ache, a rhythmic drumming that matches the flickering of the flames, and you know that the simple act of survival is about to become much more complicated. The pain in your jaw is not a mere annoyance. In 1776, it is a harbinger of a terrifying and primitive reality. As you sit by the flickering hearth, nursing a face that has begun to swell, you realize that your modern understanding of health and hygiene is a dream from a future century. Here, there are no white-coated dentists, no local anesthetics, and certainly no concept of saving a tooth. To have a toothache is to enter a dark lottery where the only prize is the cessation of agony through violent extraction. You reach for your toothbrush, a frayed twig of birch or dogwood that you've chewed at one end until it resembles a coarse, woody brush. You rub it against your teeth with a bit of crushed charcoal or salt, feeling the abrasive grit scraping against your enamel. There is no minty freshness, only the taste of soot and the copper tang of bleeding gums. You think of George Washington, the man leading the Continental Army just a few hundred miles away. Even he, the most powerful man in this new nation, is tormented by the same rot. His wooden teeth are a myth. The reality is far more macabre. Dentures carved from hippopotamus ivory and lead, wired together with springs that force his mouth shut, occasionally even featuring real human teeth purchased from the poor. If the general cannot escape this dental purgatory, what hope do you have? This is the reveal of colonial medicine. It is a world of heroic measures and horrific consequences. To be ill is to be a battlefield where the cure is often as deadly as the disease. The local doctor is likely the blacksmith or the barber, men whose primary qualification is the strength of their wrists and the sharpness of their razors. If the pain becomes unbearable, you will find yourself seated in a common wooden chair, your head held firmly by a neighbor, while a dental key is hooked around the offending tooth. There is no numbing, only a stiff glass of rum if you are lucky, and the sound of bones splintering in the silence of the room. This is the immersive reality of the era of visceral, bone-deep vulnerability that makes every bite of food a calculated risk. You turn your face toward the heat of the fire, trying to draw the information out. The scent of the kitchen, stale beer, wood smoke, and the damp wool of your clothes swirls around you, but now it is underscored by the medicinal sharpness of dried herbs hanging from the rafters. You see the bundles of pennyroyal, horehound, and yarrow, the pharmacy of the frontier. These plants are the thin line between recovery and the grave. You take a small piece of willow bark and begin to chew it, its bitter juice numbing your tongue slightly. It is a primitive aspirin, a gift from the forest that reminds you of the safety inherent in nature's wisdom. As the willow bark begins to take the edge off the throbbing, you lean your head back against the rough-hewn timber wall. You feel the vibration of the house, the wind whistling through the chinking, the heavy footsteps of family members moving in the loft above. You are a ghost observing this struggle, but the empathy you feel is real. You realize that the people of 1776 didn't just endure pain. They incorporated it into their identity. They moved through their chores with abscesses, with fevers, with joints stiffened by untreated rheumatism. Their bravery wasn't just in the face of red-coated soldiers, but in the face of their own failing bodies. The return to safe comes as the warmth of the fire finally penetrates your jaw. The sharp, electric stabs subside into a dull, manageable hum-dum-dum. You are alive. You can still breathe, still work, still contribute to the survival of the farm. In a world where a scratch from a rusty nail can lead to lockjaw, and a cold can turn into a terminal consumption in a week, any day you are upright is a blessing. You watch a single spark fly up the chimney, vanishing into the gray morning sky, and you feel a profound sense of gratitude for the simple ability to swallow without wincing. But the morning is moving on. The light in the kitchen has shifted from the orange of the hearth to the cold, flat gray of a winter day. The tools are waiting. The livestock are calling. And as you stand up, your legs stiff from the low bench, you realize that the most public and grueling part of your day is about to begin, the journey beyond the fence line, into a community where your reputation is your only currency and every interaction is a delicate dance of social survival. You feel the weight of your heavy coat once more, the fabric stiff, but providing a necessary barrier as you prepare to step back out into the unyielding wind. The morning light has finally breached the heavy wooden shutters, casting long, dusty fingers across the kitchen floor, and with it comes the realization that the first major hurdle of the day is behind you. You have survived the freezing transition from bed to hearth. You have secured the fire, and you have fueled your body with the humble calories of the morning. But now, the house feels too small for the energy beginning to stir within its walls. It is time to step out again, not just to the woodpile, but into the wider, interconnected world of the 1776 farmstead. As you prepare to head toward the barns and the fields, you pause at the heavy oak door. This is the safe threshold of the morning, the moment where you are still protected by the lingering warmth of the chimney, but already bracing for the vast, indifferent sky. You check your pockets one last time, feeling the comforting weight of your small iron knife and the rough texture of a spare piece of flint. In this era, self-reliance is not a philosophy. It is a physical kit you carry on your person at all times. Stepping outside, the air is no longer the silent, stagnant cold of the pre-dawn. It has begun to move. A biting northern wind whistles through the bare branches of the apple orchard, carrying the scent of distant snow and the faint musky aroma of the livestock. This is the immersive reality of the colonial landscape. Your senses are bombarded by the raw, unwashed reality of nature. You hear the rhythmic lowing of the cow, her breath rising in thick white plumes from the darkness of the lean-to. She is waiting for you, her survival as tethered to your labor as your own is to her milk. You move toward the barn, your boots sinking into the frozen mud that has begun to soften slightly under the pale winter sun. Every step is a heavy, squelching reminder of the earth's gravity. Inside the barn, the atmosphere is different, warmer, smelling intensely of dried timothy hay, aged manure, and the oily lanolin of the sheep huddled in a corner. This is a communal, safe foundation. There is a deep, primal comfort in the presence of these animals. Their heat is a shared resource, their steady, mindless chewing, a lullaby of sorts that competes with the howling wind outside. You begin the milking, your forehead pressed against the cow's warm, coarse flank. The rhythmic sound of the milk hitting the bottom of the wooden pail is the soundtrack of the morning's second half. It is a meditative, repetitive task that allows your mind to drift. You think about the reveal of this moment, how every drop of nourishment is a direct negotiation with a living creature. There is no middleman, no grocery store, no sterilized plastic. It is just you, the animal, and the bucket. The milk is steaming, frothy, and incredibly rich, a liquid gold that represents the lifeblood of your family's winter diet. But as you finish, your hands cramped, and red from the cold and the effort. You feel the slow story of the farm pushing you forward. The sheep need hay. The chickens need their grain, scattered across the frozen dirt where they peck with a desperate, frantic energy. You move from task to task with a mechanical efficiency. You are a ghost watching a masterclass in endurance. You notice that you don't rush. Rushing leads to mistakes, and in 1776, a mistake, a spilled bucket, a forgotten latch, a twisted ankle, can have cascading consequences that last for weeks. The return to safe occurs as you finish the outdoor chores and head back toward the house, carrying the heavy pails of fresh milk. The wind tries to knock you off balance, stinging your eyes until they water, but the sight of the chimney smoke leaning hard to the south gives you a target. You are returning to the center of your universe. As you kick the snow from your boots and re-enter the kitchen, the sudden heat feels like a benediction. The smell of the house, wood smoke, herbs, and the faint scent of baking bread wraps around you like a dry, warm cloak. You set the milk on the cool stones of the pantry, feeling the transition of your role from the laborer of the fields back to the keeper of the hearth. Your body is weary, the muscles in your back humming with a dull, persistent ache, but there is a profound sense of closure beginning to ghost through your mind, even this early in the day. It is the satisfaction of a body that has been used for its intended purpose. You are not stressed in the modern mental sense, you are physically spent, which is a much cleaner, more honest kind of tired. As you take a seat by the fire for a moment of rest before the midday meal, you look at your hands. They are stained, calloused, and perhaps a bit shaky, but they are the hands that are keeping a world in motion. You realize that the hidden loop of this life is the constant, unbreakable cycle of care. The animals care for you. You care for the animals, and the earth, if treated with enough labor, cares for everyone. But the peace of the kitchen is soon broken by a new sound, the distant, rhythmic tolling of a bell, or perhaps the shouting of a neighbor from the road. In 1776, news doesn't arrive on a screen. It arrives on horseback or on foot, and it usually means that the quiet isolation of your morning is about to be shattered by the urgent, messy realities of a revolution that is brewing just over the horizon. You stand up, your heart quickening, as the door to the outside world begins to swing open once more. The kitchen table, which only moments ago was a place of silent, rhythmic eating, has now become a silent theater of political defiance. As you look at the empty ceramic mugs and the remnants of the morning's hasty pudding, you realize that something fundamental is missing from the colonial ritual of comfort. There is no steam rising from a porcelain pot, no dark aromatic leaves steeping in boiling water, and no delicate clink of a silver spoon. In the year 1776, to drink tea is to swallow treason. You are living through a great boycott, a time when a simple beverage has been transformed into a symbol of imperial tyranny. The absence of tea is a physical ache in the morning routine, a social void that reminds you with every sip of bitter small beer or grainy coffee that you are a person at war with your own traditions. You remember the stories whispered in the tavern or read aloud from the broadsides tacked to the mill door. You think of the harbor in Boston, where the dark Atlantic once smelled like a giant, salty teapot, and the way the king's soldiers now march through the streets of distant cities to enforce a tax on a leaf. This is the reveal of the colonial mind. Your private kitchen is the front line of a revolution. Every time you reach for a substituted brew made of dried raspberry leaves, Labrador ginger, or roasted rye, you are making a choice. These liberty teas, as they are called, are often thin, medicinal, and frankly disappointing to a palate raised on the rich imports of the East India Company. But as you swallow the herbal concoction, you feel a different kind of warmth, the heat of a shared purpose that stretches from your small farmhouse to the grand halls of Philadelphia. This is the immersive reality of a society in transition. You can feel the tension in the way people speak, the way they linger over the news brought by a passing traveler. The atmosphere's thick with the scent of wood smoke and the underlying ozone of an approaching storm. You are a ghost, observing the birth of a nation in the most mundane of moments. You see the pride in the eyes of the women who refuse to buy English cloth, who spend their nights spinning until their fingers bleed just to avoid putting a penny into the king's purse. The safety of the home is no longer a sanctuary from the world. It is a laboratory of resistance. You realize that in 1776, the personal is profoundly political. The clothes on your back and the liquid in your cup are your uniform and your weapon. As you sit there, the bitter taste of the herbal tea lingering on your tongue, you find a return to safe in the solidarity of the room. You look at the others around the table, and though no one speaks of the rebellion, in grand terms, the shared sacrifice creates a bond stronger than any law. You are all part of a quiet, stubborn movement that prefers the hardship of independence to the comfort of subjection. The house feels sturdier now, the heavy oak beams above you, seeming to brace themselves against a coming conflict. You take a final sip, feeling the warmth spread through your chest, a small, defiant fire that matches the one burning in the hearth. But the time for reflection is short. The rhythm of the farm is a demanding master, and the political weight of the morning must now give way to the physical weight of the afternoon. There is wood that remains unstacked, water that must be heated for the midday wash, and the constant, gnawing pressure of a body that is always one step behind the chores. You stand up, the heavy wool of your skirts or breeches rustling in the quiet air, feeling the transition from the cerebral struggle of the boycott back to the raw, tactile struggle of the frontier. The world outside is waiting, a landscape of mud and ice, where the only thing that matters is the strength of your grip and the endurance of your will. You turn toward the door, the scent of the hearth following you like a shadow, as you prepare to face the long, cold hours that lead toward the setting sun. The clothing of 1776 is not a matter of fashion, but a structural commitment to the day ahead. As you stand in the center of the drafty room, you realize that your modern body is unaccustomed to being anchored by such weight. You reach for your outer garments, feeling the coarse, oily texture of hand-processed wool. This is homespun, a fabric born of endless winter nights spent by the spinning wheel. It does not drape, it encases. If you are a man, you pull on your breeches, feeling the cold brass buttons press against your skin. If you are a woman, you layer another petticoat over the first, feeling the heavy fabric swing around your ankles like a bell. There are no zippers to slide, no elastic to stretch, and no Velcro to press. Everything is a labor of lacing, tying, and pinning. You fumble with small linen tapes, your fingers still stiff from the morning frost, securing the layers that will keep your core temperature from plummeting during the hours of outdoor work. The most punishing part of this architectural dressing is the footwear. You reach for your shoes, which sit by the hearth like two blackened, unyielding stones. In this era, there is often no distinction between left and right. These are straights, made on a symmetrical last intended to be swapped from foot to foot each day to ensure the leather wears down evenly. As you slide your feet inside, there is no soft cushioning, no arch support, and no ergonomic design. The leather is thick cowhide, stiffened by moisture and cold, and it grips your feet with a relentless, pinching pressure. You can feel every knot in the wood of the floor through the thin leather soles. To walk in these shoes is to learn a new gait, a careful, flat-footed stomp that protects your ankles from the treacherous, rutted earth outside. You lace them tight with hemp cord, feeling the blood flow constrict slightly, a necessary trade-off for the stability required to haul wood or water across the ice. This is the immersive reality of colonial physical existence. Your clothes dictate your posture. The stay or the heavy waistcoat forces your shoulders back, and your chest forward, making it impossible to slouch. You are held upright by the very fabric you wear, a constant physical reminder of the discipline required to survive this century. You feel the weight of the wool pulling at your shoulders, a burden of perhaps 15 pounds of textile that you will carry until the sun goes down. There is a strange safety in this encasement. As you finish lacing your outer coat or pinning your kerchief, you feel armored against the world. The wind might howl and the snow might drift, but beneath these layers of sheep's wool and flax, you have created a private, mobile sanctuary of heat. You take a step, hearing the heavy thud of the straight-soled shoes against the floorboards. The sensation is jarring, a rhythmic reminder that every movement in 1776 has a physical cost. You are no longer a ghost floating through time. You are a solid, weighted entity, integrated into the mechanical struggle of the farm. The clothing defines your role and your limitations. You cannot run easily, you cannot bend without effort, and you cannot forget for a single second the sheer materiality of your life. As you move toward the door, the scent of the lye-washed linen rises to meet you, a clean, sharp smell that contrasts with the heavy, musky odor of the damp wool. You are ready. You are braced. The structural preparation is complete, and the long, slow story of the afternoon's labor is about to begin under the vast, unyielding sky. The sensory map of 1776 is not drawn in lines and colors, but in a thick, inescapable atmosphere of odors that define every inch of your existence. As you step away from the immediate scrubbed sanctuary of the hearth, you are submerged in the olfactory reality of the 18th century. In your modern world, smells are sanitized, filtered, and suppressed. But here, the air is a crowded history of labor, decay, and survival. There is no escaping the scent of the wood smoke. It is the fundamental base note of life, clinging to your hair, permeating the fibers of your wool coat, and staining the very pores of your skin. It is a dry, acrid smell that signals safety and warmth, yet it is never far from the heavier, more primal scents of the farm. You move toward the transition zones of the house, and the smell of the lye soap and dried herbs begins to lose its battle against the outside world. To live in this year is to live in constant proximity to the animal kingdom. The sharp ammonia tang of the stable and the musky, greasy odor of unwashed sheep are not distant farm smells. They are the neighbors of your kitchen. As the midday sun weakly thaws the upper layer of the frozen yard, the earth begins to exhale. It is a pungent, damp aroma of rotting vegetation, turned soil, and the sour fermentation of the slop bucket. This is the immersive reality of a world without hidden plumbing or waste management. You do not recoil from these smells because they are the markers of productivity. The richness of the manure pile is the promise of next year's bread, and the heavy scent of the tan yard or the tallow vat is the smell of industry and commerce. Your nose becomes an instrument of navigation. You can smell the approaching snow in the metallic ozone sharpness of the wind. You can smell the health of the household in the yeasty scent of rising dough or the bitter, herbal steam of a medicinal wash. There is a profound reveal in this sensory honesty. Nothing is hidden behind artificial fragrances or chemical cleaners. When something is clean, it smells of lye and sun-dried linen. When something is old, it smells of dust and the slow oxidation of oak timber. You realize that your ancestors lived in a state of sensory intimacy with their environment that is almost impossible to imagine today. They knew the world by its breath. As you walk along the rutted path toward the outer fence, you encounter the scent of the wilderness beyond the clearing. It is a vast, cold smell of ancient pine needles and damp earth that has never seen a plow. It is intimidating in its purity, a reminder that your small island of human activity is surrounded by a forest that never sleeps. You find a return to safe in the scent of your own damp wool mittens as you raise them to your face to shield your nose from the wind. They smell of the sheep, the wood ash of the washtub, and the faint, salty trace of your own sweat. It is an honest smell, a human smell, and it grounds you in the physical reality of your own strength. The sensory map is constantly shifting as the sun moves across the sky. The afternoon brings the scent of the midday meal, a heavy savory aroma of salt pork and boiled cabbage that drifts from the chimney and cuts through the freezing air like a beacon. It is a smell that pulls at your stomach, a reminder of the calories you have burned and the work that remains. You turn back toward the house, your boots tracking the scent of the damp earth into the scullery, where the odors of life and labor mingle once more in the warm, stagnant air. You are a part of this atmosphere, a living thread in the complex, pungent tapestry of 1776, moving through a world where every breath tells a story of survival. The struggle for energy in 1776 is a relentless physical dialogue between your muscles and the raw materials of the earth. As the midday sun reaches its weak zenith, you find yourself back at the woodpile, the central bank of your family's survival. In your modern world, heat is a silent utility, a phantom that responds to a flickering thermostat. But here, every degree of warmth is a direct withdrawal from your own physical reserves. You pick up the heavy wedge and the iron maul, feeling the vibration of the frozen ground through the soles of your shoes. This is the immersive reality of the wood-starved winter. A single hearth can swallow a mountain of oak in a month, and the forest is a mile away. To keep the fire breathing is to engage in a slow, grinding war of attrition against the timber. You set the wedge into a frozen knot of hickory and strike. The shock travels up your arms, rattling your teeth and singing through your elbow joints. This is not the clean, effortless split of a cinematic woodsman. It is a stubborn, splintering resistance. You are trading your calories for BTS, a literal transformation of the morning's pudding into the evening's embers. The scent of the split wood rises, a sudden and sweet ghost of hot summer sap that is instantly chilled by the biting wind. You realize that the woodpile is a countdown. Every log you carry inside is a minute of safety, a shield against the creeping frost that waits just outside the door. There is no rest in this cycle, only the steady rhythmic movement of a body that has become a machine of harvest. Then comes the water, the second half of the energy equation. You return to the well, the wooden buckets feeling heavier than they did at dawn. Your shoulders ache with a deep structural fatigue that no longer goes away with a few minutes of sitting. You lower the bucket into the dark, echoing shaft, hearing the splash against the subterranean ice. Hauling it up is a test of grip and grit. The wet rope is a frozen wire that slides against your calloused palms, and the weight of the water tries to pull you toward the stone rim. This is the reveal of the colonial burden, the sheer mass of the elements. Water weighs 8 pounds a gallon, and the house requires dozens of gallons just to function. You are a beast of burden, a human pump tasked with moving the lifeblood of the farm from the depths of the earth to the iron pot on the crane. You carry the slopping buckets toward the scullery, your breath coming in ragged white plumes that match the steam rising from the kitchen door. The transition back into the warmth is almost painful, a pins and needles sensation as the blood rushes back into your numbed fingers. You set the buckets down, the water sloshing onto the floorboards where it will likely freeze again by midnight. There is a return to safe in the sight of the full pails, a temporary victory over the most basic of human needs. You have secured the moisture for the stew and the steam for the laundry. You have earned your place at the hearth for another few hours. But the work is a slow story that never truly reaches a conclusion. As you look at your hands, red and swollen from the lie and the cold, you realize that this is the price of existence. There is no leisure that is not preceded by exhaustion. The safety of 1776 is a fragile thing, built log by log and bucket by bucket dotted. You lean against the timber wall for a moment, feeling the heat of the fire on your face and the cold of the draft on your heels. A person caught between two worlds. The energy you have spent today is gone, etched into the woodpile and the water barrel, and tomorrow the earth will demand the same payment all over again. You take a deep breath, the smell of wood smoke and damp wool filling your lungs, and prepare for the next turn of the wheel. In the year 1776, the boundary between the natural and the supernatural is as thin as the vellum pages of a family Bible. As the afternoon light begins to fail, the shadows in the corners of the kitchen stretch and deepen, transforming familiar tools into strange, skeletal shapes. This is the immersive reality of a world governed by faith and folklore, where the unknown is not a mystery to be solved, but a presence to be respected. Your belief system is a sturdy, practical architecture built of scripture, superstition, and the hard-won wisdom of the seasons. You find safety in the rhythmic recitation of the evening prayers, the ancient words acting as a verbal hearth that keeps the darkness of the wilderness at bay. But even within the sanctuary of the home, the old stories of the old world have taken root in the soil of the new. Entertainment is not a product you consume, but a craft you practice with your kin. In the absence of glowing screens and printed distractions, the human voice becomes the primary vessel of culture. You sit by the fire, the crackle of the hickory logs providing the only percussion to the slow story of the evening. Someone begins to tell a tale, a narrative of a neighbor's strange luck or a traveler's encounter with a phantom light in the marsh. These stories are the viral loops of the 18th century, passed from mouth to ear until they become a part of the local geography. There is a profound reveal in this shared mythology. It tethers you to the land and to the people around you, creating a collective memory that defies the isolation of the frontier. You listen with a focused intensity that is almost impossible to achieve in a world of constant interruption, your mind painting vivid, terrifying, and beautiful pictures in the dancing orange light. When the stories turn toward the lighter side of life, the room fills with a different kind of energy. You might witness a game of riddles, a contest of wit where the prize is nothing more than the laughter of the group. Or perhaps someone brings out a simple wooden flute or a jaw harp, the twanging metallic melody cutting through the heavy air of the kitchen. This is the return to safe through communal joy. For a few hours, the ache in your shoulders and the cold in your feet are forgotten. You are no longer just a laborer or a survivor. You are a participant in the oldest human ritual of connection. The music is raw and unrefined, echoing the rugged landscape outside, but it carries a warmth that no fireplace can match. You find yourself swaying to the rhythm, the heavy wool of your clothes moving in time with the ancient tunes of the ancestors. But even in the height of the merriment, the gravity of the era remains. You look at the face of an elder, the firelight catching the deep lines of a life spent in the service of a stern and demanding faith. You realize that for the colonial soul, pleasure is always balanced by the weight of eternity. Every song is a brief respite from a world of original sin and hard labor. You find a strange comfort in this seriousness. It gives your life a scale and a purpose that transcends the daily grind. The entertainment of 1776 is a preparation for the soul, a way of hardening the spirit against the inevitable trials of the flesh. You take a deep breath of the wood-scented air, feeling the vibration of the music in your chest, and realize that you are part of a long, unbreakable chain of human endurance. As the music fades and the fire burns down to a glowing mound of ash, the transition towards sleep begins. The stories have been told, the prayers have been whispered, and the shadows have claimed the rest of the house. You feel the slow pull of exhaustion, a physical and spiritual weight that signals the end of the day's social contract. The world outside is a vast, silent void. But here, within the circle of the hearth, you have built a fortress of meaning. You prepare to climb the stairs to the loft, the scent of the dying fire following you like a blessing, as you leave the vibrant world of the living for the quiet, haunted realm of dreams. The return to safe is complete, and the long, slow story of the colonial night is ready to begin its final chapter. In the year 1776, the world does not come to you. You must go to the world, and every mile is a hard-won victory over the geography of the wild. As you stand by the frozen post road that cuts a jagged brown scar through the white silence of the fields, you realize that distance is the most formidable adversary of the colonial era. In your modern mind, 100 miles is a triviality of 2 hours and a climate-controlled cabin. But here, 100 miles is a journey of days, a grueling odyssey of mud, bone-jarring ruts, and the constant threat of a broken axle or a foundered horse. This is the immersive reality of a planet that is still vast and untamed. To travel is to submit your body to the mechanical whims of the earth. You feel the vibration of a distant stagecoach, not as a sound at first, but as a low, rhythmic thud in the soles of your feet. A mechanical heartbeat of the empire moving through the forest. When the coach finally emerges from the tree line, it is a revelation of dust and straining leather. This is the great vessel of information, the only tether between your isolated farm and the burning centers of revolution in Philadelphia or New York. There is no instantaneous pulse of data here. News moves at the speed of a galloping horse, limited by the endurance of a beast and the quality of the fodder. You watch as the driver flings a leather satchel toward the tavern porch, a bundle of weeks-old gazettes and hand-inked letters that carry the weight of a changing world. This is the slow story of human connection. To wait for a letter is to live in a state of suspended animation, your heart hanging on the hope of a message that may have been lost in a flooded creek or intercepted by a British patrol. The silence between people is a physical weight, a gap that can only be bridged by the incredible effort of physical transit. As you walk back toward the house, the scent of the road follows you, a mixture of horse manure, wet cedar, and the metallic tang of the iron-rimmed wheels. You realize that your entire worldview is shaped by the horizon you can see with your own eyes. In 1776, most people will never travel more than 30 miles from the place of their birth. This isolation creates a profound sense of local safe foundation. Your neighbors are your universe, and the stranger on the road is a source of both wonder and deep suspicion. You find a return to safe in the sight of your own fence line, the sturdy split rails acting as a boundary between the known world of your labor and the vast, uncertain reaches of the continent. The news in that leather satchel might tell of kings and congresses, but here, the most important reality is the integrity of your own roof and the depth of your woodpile. The transition from the public road back to the private hearth is a shift in the very scale of time. On the road, time is measured in leagues and the endurance of teams. At home is measured in the burning of a candle and the rising of the bread. You feel the weight of the world's slow pace in the ache of your own legs. In this century, the human body is the primary mode of transport for the majority of the population. To go to market, to go to church, to visit a dying relative, it all requires a deliberate expenditure of physical energy that makes every social interaction a sacred commitment. You cannot pop in on a neighbor. You must commit an afternoon to the mud and the wind. This creates a society of deep, slow roots, where every handshake has the gravity of a contract, and every word spoken face to face carries the resonance of truth. But as the sun dips lower, casting long skeletal shadows across the road, the silence of the landscape returns. The stagecoach has vanished into the timber, leaving only the settling dust and the cooling ruts. You are alone again with the sounds of the evening, the wind in the dried cornstalks and the distant, mournful cry of a wolf or a farm dog. The news of the revolution is now a part of your mind, a flickering flame of anxiety that competes with the cold. You realize that while the world moves slowly, it is moving toward a crisis that no distance can truly hide from. You turn your back on the road and head for the glowing orange rectangle of the kitchen window. The return to safe, drawing you back to the only place where the pace of life feels manageable, even as the tides of history begin to rise just beyond the trees. The Revolutionary War in 1776 is not a spectacle seen on a screen. It is a cold, creeping shadow that stretches across your threshold and chills the very air of your kitchen. As the evening deepens, the conversation around the hearth shifts from the price of grain to the movement of regiments. You feel the immersive reality of a landscape under siege, not by a distant enemy, but by the fracture of your own community. In this year, the safe of your neighbor's greeting has been replaced by a cautious, measuring look. Are they a Whig or a Tory? Do they harbor a secret loyalty to the crown, or are they willing to risk the gallows for the cause of independence? This is the reveal of civil war. The most intimate spaces, the tavern, the church pew, the shared fence line, have become theaters of suspicion. The silence of the winter woods no longer feels peaceful. It feels pregnant with the possibility of a scout's musket or the distant, rhythmic thud of a marching column. You reach out and touch the smooth, cold barrel of the flintlock musket hanging above the mantel. This is not a decorative heirloom. It is a functional limb of your household. In 1776, the return to safe is found in the weight of the iron and the dry, acrid scent of the black powder in the horn. You think of the men from your village who have already marched away, their homespun coats disappearing into the grey mist of the Highland passes. They are not professional soldiers. They are the blacksmiths, the millers, and the sons of your cousins, thrust into a conflict that is as chaotic as it is existential. You feel a profound sense of slow story in the way news of the war reaches you. Rumors of a defeat at Long Island, whispers of a daring crossing of the Delaware, stories that arrive fragmented and blood-stained weeks after the events have passed. You are living in a vacuum of information, where fear grows in the gaps between the truth. The atmosphere in the house has changed. The light from the tallow candles seems smaller, more fragile against the vast, encroaching darkness of the revolution. You realize that your personal survival is now inextricably tied to a grand collective gamble. If the revolution fails, the very land beneath your feet could be forfeit. If it succeeds, the world you knew will be gone forever. This is the immerse of a historical pivot point. You are a ghost watching the hinges of the world creak and groan under the strain of change. You see it in the way the elders grip their walking sticks, their knuckles white with a tension they cannot name. You see it in the way the children huddle closer to the fire, sensing a shift in the adult world that they cannot comprehend. The safe foundation of the British Empire has crumbled, and in its place is a terrifying, beautiful, and uncertain void. As you prepare for the final rituals of the night, you check the heavy bars on the door with a new kind of intensity. The threat is no longer just the wolf or the frost. It is the political storm that knows no boundaries. You find a return to safe in the simple, repetitive acts of domestic security: banking the fire, checking the latches, whispering a prayer for the men in the camps. The war has stripped away the luxuries of the mind, leaving only the essential truths of loyalty, family, and the soil. You are a part of this struggle, a quiet, unheralded pulse in the heart of a new nation. The revolution is not just in the battles of Trenton or Princeton. It is here, in the shivering silence of a farmhouse, where a people are learning to live without a king. The transition to the final hours of the day is marked by a heavy, contemplative stillness. You feel the weight of the century pressing down on your shoulders, a burden of history that you did not ask for but must carry nonetheless. The sleep closure of the day is haunted by the knowledge that tomorrow may bring the sound of drums or the sight of smoke on the horizon. But for now, the house is still. The fire is a low orange eye watching over the room, and the scent of the wood smoke is a familiar, grounding presence. You have survived another day in the year of the hangman, and as you turn toward the stairs, you carry the spark of defiance with you into the dark, a small private flame that the wind of revolution cannot extinguish. The final embers of the hearth have collapsed into a soft, pulsing mound of glowing orange, casting long, rhythmic shadows that dance like weary spirits across the ceiling beams. The house has settled into its nighttime skin, the timber groaning as it contracts against the biting frost of the outside world. This is the ultimate return to safe, the moment where the brutal physical demands of 1776 finally surrender to the irresistible gravity of exhaustion. You stand at the foot of the narrow ladder leading to the loft, your body feeling like a collection of heavy, aching weights. The water is holed, the wood is split, the livestock are sheltered, and the fire is banked. You have fulfilled your contract with survival for one more sun cycle, and the reward is this profound, bone-deep stillness. As you climb the rungs, the air grows colder, pulled away from the heat of the main floor, yet it smells of clean hay and the lingering scent of dried lavender from the storage chests. You reach the straw tick and slide beneath the heavy, lanolin-scented wool blankets. The transition is jarring at first, the linen sheets feeling like thin sheets of ice against your skin. But slowly, the heat of your own body begins to build a microclimate of warmth. You lie perfectly still, listening to the symphony of the colonial night. There is no hum of electricity, no distant roar of engines, only the frantic scratching of a mouse in the eaves and the rhythmic hollow whistling of the wind through the cedar shingles. This is the immersive silence of the 18th century, a silence so thick it feels like a physical presence pressing against your chest. Your mind begins to drift, the sharp edges of the day's anxieties, the toothache, the political rumors, the dwindling grain blurring into a soft, gray fog. This is the sleep closure of a life lived in total alignment with the rising and setting of the sun. You are not a ghost anymore. You are the very earth itself, heavy and dormant, waiting for the light to return. You feel the slow story of your ancestors pulsing in your blood, a lineage of endurance that has survived 1,000 winters just like this one. The safety you feel is not guaranteed by locks or laws, but by the simple fact that you are part of a cycle that is larger than yourself. The revolution may rage beyond the hills, and the frost may bite at the glass, but here, in the dark, you are held by the weight of the wool and the grace of a day's hard work. The fire below has faded to a single watchful eye of red, and the shadows have claimed every corner of the room. Your breathing slows, matching the steady, slow heartbeat of the sleeping house. You are sinking into a dreamer's void where the labor of the hands is finally forgotten and the spirit is allowed to wander. The year 1776 fades away, leaving only the warmth of the blankets and the ancient, comforting scent of the wood smoke. You have crossed the threshold of the day, and the night is a vast, kind ocean waiting to take you in. I hope this journey into the past has brought you a sense of peace and a deeper connection to the resilient spirits who came before us. May your rest be as deep and well-earned as theirs. Good night.